Hello, everybody, and welcome to this evening's episode of Mapping It Out. Now, my name is Guy, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of very, very complicated things this evening. So complicated, in fact, that I've been watching videos for the last week trying to explain what on earth it is we're going to be talking about tonight. And I have failed and cannot do it. My little brain starts to dribble out of my ears. So it is going to be quite a technical discussion this evening. If you know who Mr. Wang is in the field of mathematics, then you'll know what sort of journey we're in for. But that's not what we're going to be talking about initially. Anyway, we're going to get all of the interestingly less mathematical stuff out the way first. So we're going to be talking about a new developer is joining with the Deios team, which is super exciting. They start on the 1st of June. So we're going to catch up and find out what that entails. We're going to be talking about the new patch, which is going to be coming out possibly during the show tonight, and then we're going to talk about the one last step before technical alpha closes, and then we're going to talk about 20 days of infinite textures. At least hopefully Till is going to talk about that, because I certainly wouldn't be able to do that at all. Now, as per normal, if you do have questions, please put the word question in caps in front of your question so that I can see it and then pose it to Till. When it comes to the heavy math later on, neither of us are quantum mechanics engineers, so please bear that in mind. We will be sharing up links for videos that do discuss the actual mathematics involved for those of you who really want to know. But anyway, enough from me. Let's get Till in. Now, he has gone green in my screen because of a Zoom thing. Let's see what OBS says. OBS says, no, Till, you are green screened out. I cannot see you.
Oh no!
He's there. I promise you, he is there. he's just invisible at the moment. So I'm going to go back to my screen whilst we see. I think perhaps Till might need to rejoin the Zoom call. So if you just leave and come back again, that will sort it out. So what happens is, just for those of you that are wondering what on earth is going on, is Zoom is a wonderful creature, but quite a delicate creature. And the demonstration that Till's going to be doing for us tonight, we were running through it earlier on, is lots of PowerPoint, lots of mathematics, and then actual demonstrations within Deios itself of this whole infinite texturing thing. And so that just obviously puts a massive load out onto, I would imagine, the GPU and all those kinds of wonderful things, causing Zoom to sometimes fall over. All right, I'm joining Till's call, apparently, because that's how, oh my goodness, okay. Well, now we have the problem of who phones whom on Zoom. So Till just tried to call me. I'm going to try and call him back now. And isn't it wonderful, all these things that we do whilst live on a broadcast? You would have thought we sorted this out beforehand, but to be truthful, we actually did. We've been chatting for about half an hour as Till has been trying to explain to me all of the nuances. Now, thankfully, Till has rejoined us, and I can see that he is no longer green and is actually the right shade of Till. Here he is. Till, welcome to the show.
Hello, welcome everyone. Hulk smash.
Apparently.
Yeah, unfortunately, Zoom is doing that sometimes, especially when you have a lot of stress on your RAM or your PC, and with all the stuff that I have open in the background, it is probably a little bit heavy on the Zoom call today.
Exactly. That's what we were saying. So, okay, so let's get on with it now that we have passed the first hurdle and on to infinity, as they say. We're talking about a new developer joining the team on the 1st of June. Why?
Yes,
why is there a new developer joining the team?
Okay. I think, first of all, hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. So Sasha is joining us in June. It's going to be the 9th of June. But he is going to join us on the Deios team to add more manpower to the restructuring and rebuilding of the user interface. Because for those of you who remember the initial user interface that we've introduced back with the first alpha, the first technical alpha, that was quite a beautiful user interface. The problem we had was that it was running through the Chromium embedded framework, which was draining a lot of our resources. So when we started to restructure and rebuild everything, we said we can't really, if we want to continue a technical alpha, we can't really focus also on the whole UI thing in the same time. That would just kill a small team as we are. So we said we're running with a very minimalistic user interface so that we can check the interface off while we test and develop together with you all, and you're testing the technicalities like the rendering, the performance, the stability, all of that. And now that we are about to close our technical alpha or find an end to the technical alpha, we now have the time to bring in our, like, hopefully our final user interface. But also this means that we want to have someone who is not taking resources from feature development. So we said, okay, we want to have someone on the team who can assist us. He's not doing user interface 100%. It's going to be something around 50% user interface development and 50% assisting the team as junior developer to develop the upcoming Deios features. And yeah, and I feel like this is a great way to move forward and to have a fourth member working on Deios now.
Absolutely. Now, does that necessarily mean that we're going to see a radical speed up in turnaround time on patches and that sort of thing? I had to ask.
You had to ask. So again, I feel like there is the saying that if you have one mother, then it takes 9 months to bring birth to a child. But if you have 9 mothers, that would mean that you have the child in 1 month. And that apparently isn't true in life. So the same thing goes for software development. There's going to be a slowdown initially because we have to do the onboarding and the training, and hopefully eventually it will mean that it is at least, well, I hope it is a speed boost to development, but at least it means that we can bring more attention to stabilizing and performance testing and like code cleanup. So I'm not sure if we're going to see a drastic increase on development speed, but at least having 4 people working on it from a developer's perspective means that more eyes can see the code and more people can make sure that the features that we release are stable.
That makes sense. Will we get the UI before we move away from technical alpha into feature alpha, do you think, or is it going to be a integrate as we go type of process?
So I've always said that the second that we have the textures being tested and verified from the users, then we kind of concede, is that the word? We concede the technical alpha. And this kind of falls in line with the development time that we take now to finish the UI. So I think that's just a personal perspective. I think from a release standpoint, there is going to be, it will most likely take a month to upgrade the UI. Probably a bit longer, we don't know, we will see, depending on how fast we are with onboarding. But I think that is enough time to see the testing results from the textures and from the build that we're handing out now. And I already know that there's going to be a patch in about 2 weeks. So I would say it is our goal to close technical alpha with the release of the new UI, or let's turn it around, I would say that we are going to end the technical alpha in June, by the end of June, which means hopefully by then we have also the new UI.
Fantastic. Now, do you think that Sasha's going to be the last person that you add to the Deios team?
Well, no, I'm not. I don't think so. I think there will be probably more people joining, but much later. Like for now, I think we have quite a solid core team developing, and so there is going to join someone in the DungeonFog team next month, which is Nicole. She's going to be assisting us with the social media. So there is we're constantly growing as a company. But for the Deios team, I would say until fall or end of year, there isn't really. We don't know that there is someone coming. That might change suddenly, but it isn't being expected.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, we wish Sasha and the team all the best with this new growth. Fantastic news there. Now, the latest patch, when is the latest patch dropping till?
I just got notifications from the developers that they are currently building the new version, the new patch. So 0.2.4 is being produced as we speak. It has been tested over the weekend and has been finalized yesterday. We have some minor adjustments and tweaks today. I would assume that somewhere between our stream and the late evening for us, or the early day for the others. So if you're in the States today, you're going to see the new patch. And we're going to look at it
yes,
here on stream today.
Exactly. We're not going to look at it just yet. We're going to jump just a little bit ahead first to what's still coming in terms of finishing off the technical alpha. So this new patch is introducing textures. What's left after textures to finish off technical alpha?
I know that we have some stuff on the list, but it's been heavily debated whether or not this is part of the feature alpha or it is part of finishing the technical alpha. So, for example, the blueprint system is heavily debated. We know that we want to do something with the way that that you brush props. So there are some ideas there that we want to integrate before we. But to be honest, it's a very exciting time at the moment because we are now in the realms where it is really hard to decide what you're doing. Is that already feature or is that still tech alpha? And that means that we're almost finished with tech alpha because we are suddenly, with everything that comes on the table, we're suddenly like, wait, that's kind of feature alpha already. So from my perspective, texture testing is the finalization of the tech alpha. And once we have the confirmation from US testers to see that everything works fine and great, we're closing tech alpha 1, tech alpha, and we're going into features alpha. And we're also going to have a conversation about, like internally first, about is feature alpha also alpha 2, as we call it in the Kickstarter campaign, or is feature alpha, or do we want to build up a little bit more of like a tool set before we call it tech alpha, feature alpha?
Feature alpha 2.
Alpha 2.
Till, has the undo and redo been brought in yet? Is that something that's going to come in with technical alpha?
The undo and redo is being finished by the end of the week, so we know that this is going to be one of the patches next week that will introduce a full undo redo stack. So it's not going to be part of the patch today, but it's going to be part of finishing tech alpha.
Okay, fantastic. And you are also aiming to have the UI included in that. So before we finish, so what can we expect from that new UI by the end of June? What's going to be different?
Well, I think, honestly, I thought that the initial UI that we had for Deios in the first alpha build, what we're calling the initial Rust build, I think the UI was quite beautiful. So we are going to bring that UI back into the application, which means that from a design perspective, the dashboard will be back in a proper dashboard. The panels will have the proper layout and design for the toolbar panels, and there will be kind of convenience transitions and animations when you open or close something. It can really open and close stuff. So the biggest advantage for us is that it is one of the biggest UI frameworks that is being on the market, and it is very versatile, which means that we are taking away the restrictions that the current UI is putting on us, where every field that you want to add is kind of a fight between the developer and the UI until it finally does what it does. So for those of you who know a little bit about user interface development, the new one is using the Visual Studio Blend to create user interface, which is kind of high professional tool to create desktop software interfaces. And that is, we're all looking forward to using that as a professional tool.
Is that the biggest challenge with implementing the UI? Is getting that conversation to happen between the developer and the
yes, because if you think about it, we're not doing a computer game. In a computer game, the UI is often very simple. Like, for example, the base UI in Diablo is basically the bottom bar, and then you have bags and inventory, and that's it. That's the UI requirements for a game. If you think about Deios, it is more comparable to a graphics design software that is living and breathing from the interface. If the interface is crappy, then you will always get lost. And we as designers are limited to make the tool usable for you. So having a strong and versatile user interface is crucial to creating a design software like Deios.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are we still roughly on track for where you predicted we would be in January? So 5 months ago, you said in January, this is where we hope to be. Are we kind of there?
I think, yes, we are. I think initially I was hoping to have the technical alpha concede after a quarter. So we're probably, now we're a month over. And if we take June, we're 2 months over. But I can see in terms of internally, when we're looking at the development progress and the speed that we have quite a good development speed. So I feel like I was always hoping to enter feature alpha in summer, and we are entering feature alpha in summer. So yeah, I feel like we're on good track.
Okay. Just before we leave this, because I'm trying to put it off as long as I can, because my brain hurts when we talk about it. But just before we get to talking about infinity and why there are different types of infinity. I mean, different types of infinity. Infinity is infinity, right? Wrong. There are different types of infinity. There's infinity. Anyway, but see what happens. So before we get there, what is the next biggest challenge facing Deios?
I would say the layers menu, because we haven't because of making the layers menu in the current UI is like drilling into your brain. This is a pain. So we've been putting that off until we have the new UI, and I think this is going to be one of the biggest challenges, not only less from a development standpoint and more from a concept standpoint. We've learned quite a lot through the first alpha and the first layering system, and we know that we need to address that from a completely different angle and a different perspective. And I think this is going to, while we constantly are going to release features, we will still probably have a few iterations before we're happy with the way that layers work in Deios.
Okay, makes sense. Now we do have some questions which I'm going to ask quickly. Funcracker says, are Windows and Mac development going to reach the next alpha stage at the same time?
Yes. What we're doing is we're doing a development where we can build the same build can be distributed to Mac, Linux, and Windows at the same time. So we're already developing in a way that we can do that, which means that when we release a new version, it will always be released to Mac, Windows, and Linux at the same time and at the same development stage.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that's as good an answer as you could possibly hope to get. Okay. Right. The moment we have all been waiting for. WANG tiles and the infinite idea of WANG tiles. I think it's safe to say it's revolutionized the whole way of looking at textures within the DungeonFog company.
Yeah, well, but to be honest, it has revolutionized the way that companies, all companies, gaming companies, can do textures, generally speaking.
Absolutely.
It was a very interesting concept. And it is, in terms of investment, and I mean by development time and work, it is a cheap solution. So that is why WANG tiles are so interesting. But I think
you've got a demo for us, but I think the other thing is that WANG tiles came around in what, 1935. I think somewhere around there. I'm not too sure. So it's not a brand new concept, but in terms of
1961, I think how WANG introduced.
I thought it was finished. Yes, anyway, it doesn't matter. It started a while ago, but not that long ago.
Yes.
So there we are.
It is an interesting example of how a mathematician, because that's what how WANG was, and he was a mathematician and a logic philosopher. I don't know how you call that. But this is a very interesting example of how something abstract that is just in the realms of again, philosophy, logic, and mathematics, how something like that can find its way into a practical solution for some weirdos in Vienna who are trying to solve gigantic patterns on world maps,
on fantasy maps. That's what I like. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. All right, shall we switch over to your talk, Till? Because that's really what it is. Because I'm not going to be talking at all. You will be happy to hear. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1, and switch.
He said, and I needed to switch. Okay. Okay. So. I think not many of you really know what WANG tiles are or what we are talking about. So I was trying to prep something that kind of picks you up in a very practical way, because we're not going to talk about the mathematical aspects of that. But I was trying to show you how this affects us as a company and how we can use this system for Deios specifically. So in the Battlemap editor, we currently, sorry, that was, I need to be on the right screen here. So there you go. In the Battlemap editor, we are already using seamless textures. So a seamless texture is basically an image, a texture that is drawn in a way that you can start to tile it up. So regardless of whether it fits on the right and left or the top and bottom, they always fit together. And this is quite amazing and very useful, because it's not hard for an artist to create a seamless pattern. The problem with seamless patterns, however, is that they are only to some extent repeatable, because if you start to repeat them over and over again, you will start to see a pattern forming out of those tiles being put together. So the more you zoom out, the more you will see that this pattern is getting a repeating structure. And it's not attractive to the eye if you have something like that on on any texture, basically. So for the battle map editor, it is, for a long time, it hasn't been a problem, because you're basically, you're building rooms where big patterns, like big tiles and bigger textures aren't really forming that problem. But for something like a world map, where you want to have water texture, and you zoom out to world scale, we can't really afford of having something like that visually representing your water texture. So we needed to work on a solution for that. So we were looking for a way of creating non-repeating patterns. And our initial idea, if you remember back in the old Deios alpha, our initial idea was to do that through shaders. Now the big problem, or what we've identified two major problems with shaders. The one is that artists can't just go out there and code shaders themselves. Artists usually are very good at artistic tools like Photoshop, GIMP, Affinity, something like that, where they draw stuff. So if I go out to Keora, or if I go to Forgotten Adventures, or any other artist out there and say, oh, look, we're interested in some cool new pattern or textures for water and land masses or brushes, but by the way, could you please code that in shader code? Then they would all be like, no. So we said, okay, this is to some kind limiting to what we want to do, and Deios should be something where, again, we as a community work together with different artists, and you should be able to upload textures and use them if you've created your own textures, for example. So that was one of the big cons. The other,
can I jump in quickly, Till? Sorry to interrupt you on your flow there, but I think something else that's quite important when talking about the fact that artists can't draw shaders is that we don't want the map to look like it's been digitally created. We want it to feel as if it is this artistic work. And clearly the computer hates me because you've gone green again.
Yeah, I feel like I took a sip and then I went green.
Maybe your computer's allergic to Coke Zero.
Well, that would be bad, because that is my main
That's what you
food.
live on. Yes, exactly.
That's what I live on.
All right.
It's readable for now. Let's hope it turns back. Otherwise, I can just try to turn off some of the stuff that I'm running in the background.
Just rejoin the call as we did before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Sorry. So you were then moving away from artistic integrity to the next point.
Exactly. So the next point is that we have learned that our shaders and the shader calculations on such a big map are extremely demanding on performance. So we're going to talk about that a bit later, but it meant that it was eating up about 75% of the whole budget to CPU and graphics card rendering, just to render the shaders on the map. And this is absolutely devastating if you want to have a graphics software that just one tiny aspect of the software is already taking 75% of your whole budget. So I think before I can go on, we would either need to, I would quickly have to rejoin your call.
All right. Okay, so Tiller's going to rejoin that call, and I will indeed make sure that he comes back in as soon as he's left. So just trying to sort this out, and so I have sent him the invite. Hopefully he will come back, and hopefully it will look good. I hope you guys can see what's going on here in a little bit, in a small sense of the word, of what is happening, what the problems are that are going to be solved by I suppose it's Dr. Wang, but anyway, here we go. Tiller's back. Tiller's going to continue telling us about his issue. Till.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am back. So how Wang, again, and he was a mathematician in 1961, and he had a conjecture that said that you can, oh my God, I hope I can get it right. If you have what they're calling the plane, which is an infinite plane of well, it's an infinite plane. That you can create, and especially his idea was that you can calculate the pattern that is applied to the plane and whether or not this pattern is periodic or non-periodic. And Berger was one of his pupils, and he later disproved his conjecture. And he said, no, whatever Wang was forming up here was not true, because you can't create a non-periodic, or no, you can't create a periodic pattern over the plane. And you can't, the problem was the predictability. So mathematically, you can't predict that. However, if you're interested in that, we can link up some material on the mathematics and the logics behind that. However, what they did was Wang created, to prove his idea, he created something called the Wang dominoes or the Wang tiles. And the basic concept behind that is that you have a rule set, a mathematical rule set applied to each tile. So it can't be rotated and it can't be flipped. But if you build tiles that follow specific rules, they need to align in a specific pattern. And this pattern can be broken down. So from a graphics designer or a computer graphics standpoint, can be broken down to 16 tiles that are forming this pattern. And which we can see up here is basically each tile has a specific logic to it. So this one has a yellow corner to the top. This one has a yellow corner to the right. So from a square tile, these are all possible variations that you can form within the limits or rules that Wang brought back up. And the idea behind that is that you can basically form a very simple pattern sprite sheet out of that. But this pattern sprite sheet, following the rules that Wang defined, can be iterated and variated through different variations to always form a non-periodic pattern.
An infinite pattern.
Exactly, and an infinite pattern. Now, it turned out that you can't form a periodic but infinite pattern without having spaces or things where they don't line up, but you can create a non-periodic infinite pattern. And this is exactly the interesting part, because we don't want to create a periodic pattern. We want to create a non-periodic pattern. So in other words, when you have different textures, like you have one with many flowers and less flowers and even less flowers, you can take those, and they are all seamless textures. You can take them, and using the pattern template, you can align them on your Wang tile or on your Wang texture, and it looks something like this, which already looks interesting because it is not, it feels natural. It feels like it is not periodic. So it's a mix. And when you line this up and you create the same kind of pattern mechanic, you will see that it creates very interesting combinations of those single 16 tiles patterns that we, from a computer graphics side, can pick out of this template image. And again, the template image itself basically follows some rules where we need to know that in this area, we need to pay attention to the Wang pattern, and we are creating this whole image, but the computer can then split it into the separate 16 tiles. and take those 16 tiles. Oh, sorry, I was scrolling too much. I can't hit it. It's impossible for me. Creating those 16 tiles then in a random pattern. And if you want to see how we are doing that, I have also prepared a little demo in the software that I have been using to then draw the textures for Deios.
Now, whilst you're switching to that, I think it's important to just remind everybody that we are unfortunately streaming this demonstration through Zoom, and it compresses imagery. Its entire job is to make sure that our video comes through smoothly, but it doesn't care about detailing so much. So a lot of the imagery that you're going to be seeing, you might be looking at it going, that's just blue. It's actually textured. Just use your imagination.
Yeah. And also keep in mind that in a few hours it is going to be on the new Deios build. So you can then go in there and marvel at all the details and hopefully not find any WANG texture errors that I made. But yeah, it's going to be hard on stream to show that. So we're trying to keep it in a way that's easy to follow, even with the Zoom blurriness in there. So that is basically how you set up WANG tiles. Like you're getting a big image, the WANG image, and then you're defining all the tiles. And this is the green and red that you're seeing here. So I can turn this off. But if I turn this on, this is basically the logic that I can teach the software, where I can say, okay, look, this tile can only be aligned with some tile like this. So green can only be combined with green, red can only be combined with red, whereas this one can be on the top and on the bottom combined with red, but to the left and to the right then can be combined with green. And this is how you recreate the basic logic in the software. And then when you go into the emulation where you can run the demo, basically, you can then go in there. Let me just quickly get rid of that and redo it. And you can see that whenever I move my mouse cursor, it will do a different variation. So it's randomly creating a pattern from that. And every pattern is more or less different than the other. It's still using the same 16 tiles, but it is, I think, a good trade-off between something that an artist still can do, and it's not complicated to draw WANG tiles, and something that creates a very interesting pattern. So on the same occasion, this is the same thing here with the grass tiles. And if you're looking at the grass demo, you will see that it is beautiful in detail. And whenever I scroll, it will create a different variation, and you never feel like you are on the same, it's not a repeatable pattern as it was before. Unfortunately, if I switch to the water texture now, you will hardly see anything, because one of the challenges was to create water texture that is not intrusive on the way that you are expecting to work on a software like Deios, because you don't want to be thrown at with a massive water texture. It should be subtle. So I'm not sure if when we're going in there, you might see, even on stream, I'm not sure if you can see it, at least you can see some darker areas here and some lighter areas and then darker areas again. And I will do my best to zoom in, and we will see.
We're now starting to see an interesting pattern.
Exactly. So we've decided to use this pattern, and there is a darker area here where my mouse cursor is moving, and then we're getting lighter areas somewhere else. And let me see if I can. I think on stream it's really hard to catch. You will see it in the Deios application then. But it is always playing with this parchment feeling of having applied wet water paint on the parchment. I personally like it. Keora and I were chatting about that, and it got the thumbs up from Keora as well. So at least our house artist has approved the texture as well. I'm really interested to hear what you think about that texture when you're using it in action. And this is basically what we did, and it was, as you just said in the intro, it was 20 days of banging our heads together and figuring out how we can make that work. And when I switch back to my presentation, which is where? Here. The outcome from a performance perspective is absolutely fantastic. I hope this will reflect on your testing when you're running that on your local machine. But where the shaders were eating up 75% of our total budget for rendering, the WANG tiles and the way that we're doing the WANG tiles now is somewhere around 6% of our budget. So it is quite a big step forward to having still a very stable and performant application, even on not high-end PCs.
That is a significant saving. Absolutely.
Yes, that is. Yeah.
Are we done with the presentation, Till? Can we switch back? Because we've got quite a few questions to go through.
Let's go back to
questions.
Let's
switch back. Switch. There we go. Okay. I mean, firstly, that was a fantastic presentation, Till. You really summed up the whole thing about periodic and non-periodic very, very well.
I apologize for everything that I did wrong.
Well, it made sense to me, so it's got to make sense to everybody else then, because I'm your lowest common denominator here. So I have a few questions first, which I'm just going to throw out. One of the things that I remembered about the videos on non-periodic tables, and this is where infinity has different variable infinity values, is that because it's generated, you never know which generator version you're on, and you can never know because you never know where you are in the iteration, right? On the infinite plane, you are somewhere there, but you don't know which infinite plane you're on, and you will never be able to know. Does that mean that every time I reload my DungeonFog map, everything's going to reiterate again, and I won't know which one it is? Because for some people, they might want infinity number 1 and not infinity number 53. But they won't know which one they're on.
So first of all, although we would love to, DungeonFog is not an infinite plane. It has limitations. So, and second, that is where seeding comes in play. Because we can, when we generate that texture, we can take that seed and save it, and that's what we're already doing. Like we know the texture that has been generated. It was one of the first questions that I asked when my developers were showing it to me was wait, is that texture going to change every time I load up the application? And the answer is no.
Okay. Do you think, or will you be using that same logic for the brushes? So if we're brushing
No, I don't. Maybe. So we want to have textures for brushes, of course. I'm not sure if brushes need WANG textures. We will have to test that. We will see that. The thing is, even though WANG tiles are doable, you have to kind of have artists willingly agree to draw all their artwork in WANG tiles. So we need to, regardless of whether or not we as Deios or DungeonFog are doing WANG tiles, we have to have a system in place that can also deal with just plain seamless textures. The second thing is, although there will be textures that you can apply to brushes, you can also just use the brush to colorize the base texture that your landmass has, which still raises a question that we haven't really resolved yet, because again, I think it's an either or approach. But you could change the general texture of the landmass to a WANG texture, and then just brush colors on top of them that are kind of multiplying with the ground. Or you could take a flat color landmass and then combine that with textured brushes, or you can do both. And brushes are already in the making, so we will fairly soon know what is the best way to approach that.
Can you make WANG tiles that have transparency as their one color variable? Do you know?
Well, I do think yes, because it's a PNG, and we can define areas that are blending from non-transparent into transparent. So I would assume yes.
Okay. Let me jump onto the questions then that folks have been asking in chat. Damien the DM on YouTube says, is Till in a new interface, or is this just what the developer environment looks like? I think that's talking about your WANG tile generator software. That was separate software.
Yes, that's a completely separate software. The software is called Tiled, and was just something that we found that made it easy and doable to test your WANG tiles before we hand them to the developers, because we needed to make sure that the concept by itself is working, because we could potentially have realized that even the WANG tiles aren't the way to go. So we needed a way to test that, and where Shader Toys back in November and December was the tool that we used to develop our shaders, Tiled was the software that helped us to develop the WANG tiles.
Okay, makes sense. Then a question from Twitch. Roger B says, will you show which artwork is WANG tiled or not, or will you require all seamless, I'm assuming, textures to be WANG textures?
No, as I said before, we can't expect from artists to just do WANG type textures. We are hoping that some artists are interested in the concept and will do WANG type textures, which then leads up to the second part or the first part of your question, which was, are we going to show you as a user which texture is WANG and which is not? And the answer is most likely yes.
Okay. You've played around with making WANG textures. Is it quite difficult? I mean, you do have an extensive background history in graphic art and design, so it's not like it's a new process for you, but was it difficult?
I wouldn't, yes and no. Like, it was difficult to wrap your head around in the first place. So creating my first WANG texture was really hard. I felt like I spent about 6 hours until the first WANG texture that I did was looking great and didn't have any flaws in there. The second was much faster. I think the second only took me about, well, probably 1.5 hours. And that's mainly because I'm just pedantic when it comes to details. And I was like, no, I need a little more of molded parchment here and stuff like that. So generally speaking, it has a high learning curve. But once you've wrapped your head around, then it's quite simple. And also, by the way, we are still investigating if there isn't a way for us to automate the WANG type production.
Interesting. So that was another question, a follow-up from there was Fun Cracker asking, are there any well-known image or graphic editors that come with a template for designing WANG tiles?
So I don't know from my personal experience, because I was in the extreme comfort zone of Bodhi sending me one Photoshop template saying, here, use this and create your WANG tiles. And I think he built that for himself, but I would be more than open to share that with you so you can use it. And also, if you're interested in that, I will do a little tutorial on how to create a WANG tile with that Photoshop file. That's no problem at all.
I think that would be very interesting to have a look at. And then finally, Damien the DM asks, were the shaders being such a performance drain, being a drain like that, were they the cause for the graphics cards to ramp way up?
Yes, not the single cause, but about 75% of the cause. So they were quite intense. The second very intense thing was the layers list.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely, I can imagine. Yeah. Okay. Well, now Layers has got more memory to play with, so hopefully that will have a knock.
Yeah. Also, we're taking a completely different approach, and we're not kind of pulling all the information through the renderer, the RPC framework, into Chromium embedded framework, where we then try to reflect in real time what you're doing to the stage. So it's a completely different architectural setup that we're currently working in. So I think chances are good that the layers list is going to be absolutely performance uncritical, even in developing it. I'm more concerned about the conceptual aspects of the layer list. When are they useful and when are they not?
Right, absolutely, because you can have too many and then it's no longer useful.
Well, think about it. I was rewatching because I expected the question. I was rewatching the January video where I showed the 100K map, and picture a layers list with 100,000 lines that you want to scroll to find that one asset. And that it's just useless. No one is going to use that or do that. So we need to think of a different approach of how are we going to do that.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. Last question from Damien the DM. He says, when going over the breakdown of WANG, you showed that they had red and green sections or blue and yellow. It's always just two colors. Will we be able to redefine those sections to alter how the WANG generates? Now, I think I know the answer to that, but go for it.
So the answer is no, because mechanically our system is trained to use this specific WANG texture or this WANG pattern. I know that there are many different, like more colors, more variations, WANG textures out there. The trade-off we had to do was to find something that is still doable for someone with a knack for graphics design to create a texture like that. Whereas if you want to have like a 10 rows pattern, it's getting impossible to really make someone do that if you're not into doing that. We might still, there is a concept where we have 16 plus 4, where we have 20 tiles with one row of tiling hyphen. My dog just appeared at the background. With one row of additional randomization. That is something that we've been investigating. But generally speaking, it's going to be this specific pattern with slight improvements to randomization.
Absolutely. And how they actually work by compiling themselves together, that rule is set. That's the whole principle behind the WANG.
It's also, this is one of the things that took me the most of the time is if you mess, like, no, I can't switch back, but you remember this red and green pattern that I did. There are rules where you say if red touches red, you should really not change any of the seamless transition from red to red. If you mess with that, you will see it in the pattern. Like you have a little graphic relic in there. And this was what took most of the time, was identifying, messed something up in there. Which tile is it? How do I find it? How do I fix it? And if I would picture that this is a more complicated pattern in terms of the WANG pattern that we're using here, I think I would have gone mad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any shortfalls to using WANG tiles that you guys are aware of?
It's, I would say WANG tiles are a little bit of a fake promise to infinite versatility. Because again, it's still 16 different tiles that are just recombined. So you can soon, and we will see that in the Deios application. Again, I'm not sure if you're going to see it on screen, but I will do my best to show it today. We've used some different techniques to kind of build upon the way that we're using the WANG tiles. But in the end, it's 16 tiles and they're being rearranged. So there is still some kind of repetition in the texture itself. And I think one of the, let's say, shortcomings of WANG tiles then is basically that you are too much relying. It's not a dynamically generated texture, and it's not really one of those texture environments that like the Cry engine uses, or computer engines today use in computer games to really generate dynamic textures. But apart from that, I think from a technical perspective, it's a great solution, and also it is the perfect middle ground between something that is still doable for an artist and something that is still looking amazing. And yeah, we will see, again, on the feedback from you, we will learn how much you like the WANG textures. And we will then, based on that feedback, decide if we need to up our game here or if we can just continue working with that.
A slightly different question. Dragon on YouTube asks, what are the recommended system requirements to run Deios and DungeonFog? Apparently they're building a new PC. That's always fun.
Oh, I don't know from the top of my head, but there's an help desk article. If some of the moderators who are watching could link that article, that would be amazing, because we have, like, if you go to DungeonFog.com and you click on the menu and go to help desk, you will find the system specifications there. They are a recommendation that is still changing and growing and being adapted as we move along, because we are still in technical alpha. So basically the system recommendation is for the technical alpha at the moment, and we will adapt it while we go through our development stages.
Absolutely. Okay, well, on that note, we've actually come to the end of today's show, having spoken about the infinite infinity. Till, you are doing some great things throughout the week. Just remind everybody what it is that you do and where they can find you doing it.
If you sorry, I completely lost track. This Thursday we are going to be on Twitch and YouTube at 7:30 p.m. UTC, and we will be doing Mapping It Out, where we will be. I honestly, I don't know what we're doing this Thursday. It's either we're going to build one of the maps for my office game, like a DungeonFog map, or we are going to probably build a little map in Deios. I don't know yet. And then the regular times are next Tuesday. I will be back with our weekly community stream on DungeonFog, where we will be talking about the patch note that was released today on DungeonFog, but we're talking Deios today. So next week we will be looking at the patch notes. We will be looking at the progress with our GM notes, and yeah, then it's back in the regular schedule. Right, there is something very interesting coming, Guy. In collaboration with you, or especially for you, and using that for our DungeonFog community, we've been building, and I've got the list today. It's, I think, 140 sci-fi assets. And I will spend my day tomorrow uploading them and prepping them, so that by the end of the week we have released the new sci-fi pack that is brought to you and presented by you to you from How to Be a Great GM, and his new TTRPG bounty hunter.
There we go. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yes, it's 140 assets, but they're not just sci-fi. That's what I particularly like. So exciting stuff. All right. And then I think that's pretty much it, Till. If any of you are interested in role-playing and role-playing stuff on the 5th of June, Till, myself, and several others, World Anvil and Kaora, will be doing a live stream from 4 p.m. UTC called the Circle of World Builders. It's a 6-hour live stream, multiple seminars on how to improve your campaign planning, how not to be boring, basically, in that. And there's all sorts of things going on there, some amazing prizes to be won as well. Well, raffles, giveaways, I should say. So put that in your diary for next weekend if you want to join us for that. You can also head on over to the website, www.circleofworldbuilders.com, to sign up for a newsletter, which will keep you informed. From myself and from Till.
Yes, thank you as always. Have a good day, have a good afternoon, have a good evening, and happy map making.
There you go. Goodbye, everybody.